The next show will start in 1 minute.
Streaming live from the Paul and Catherine Ranke Memorial Studio, this is TV Free Baltimore. Support for TV Free Baltimore comes from viewers like you. Become a TV Free Baltimore member by visiting patreon.com/TVFreeBaltimore.
As a public service, TV Free Baltimore provides a digital soapbox for those the mainstream media ignores. The opinions expressed in this live stream are not necessarily those of the owners, management, or underwriters of TV Free Baltimore. Furthermore, TV Free Baltimore streams hyper-local content focusing on politics and entertainment in the Baltimore viewing area. You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of In, Around, and Through Maryland Politics. It is evening here in Baltimore, and it has to be whenever you have more than one libertarian meeting in the same building. And tonight we have four of us here at the table. I am joined once again by the gentlemen who hold the podcast called the Punk Rock Libertarians. If you haven't heard of them, then tonight will be your introduction. So I'll just let them go off from my right. Phil, you want to start them out? Tell them what you do, who you are, and
sure.
Anything else you want to say.
My name's Philip Dassing. I am pretty much a regular on the podcast Punk Rock Libertarians, and pretty much just post memes on Instagram, I guess.
Cool. I'm Jared Schneiderman. I'm one of the co-founders of the podcast, and I also handle most of the technical stuff. So, running the video, updating the website, posting the podcast, mixing all that kind of stuff. So,
I'm Matt Bergman. I founded the group Punk Rock Libertarians in 2009, and then I founded the Facebook page in 2010. And that page grew to about 190-some thousand people before Facebook zucked us.
Yeah, we were talking about that last time. Now, you said the Punk Rock Libertarian group. Is there a group as well still?
We still have the group.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's like over 5,000 people in there at this point.
Is it just Maryland-based or beyond?
It's people from all over.
Okay.
Yeah, all over the world. That's what I think the trend is going for with Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't want your politics in his timeline, other people's timelines. He wants to relegate people who don't have the allowable opinion into their own little groups and then segregate them. That's how I feel like that's where Facebook's headed.
Yeah, because you don't really see groups being banned that frequently.
No.
But you do see pages banned all the time.
Oh, okay.
But, you don't get the same reach with a group. I mean, you can appear in other people's timelines, but it's pretty infrequent that happens.
Okay, as a group, you mean?
As a group, yeah, and it has to be a public group in order to appear anywhere anyways. So it's not like a page where, I mean, you can blast it out to everybody, you can advertise it, you can have people share your stuff without being members of the group.
Yeah.
So, you know, Phil's conspiracy theory is probably correct.
It is
Yeah,
correct.
but now look, here you go. But if they delete your personal profile, doesn't that take your group with it? Kind of. If the group's attached to your page, almost like similar to a business page.
No, I don't think it's architected like that.
Okay.
If they take down your page, usually they'll take down your profile with it, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been in Facebook jail numerous times,
Yeah.
and the group's never been touched.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No kidding.
Yeah.
So you can still go on and post in the group?
I can't go on and post in the group. I'm in Facebook
but
jail.
other people can, yeah.
But I can get on my, I have an alternative profile. I have my Facebook jail account, Lysander Hess.
Yeah.
You just, now everyone knows.
I don't care. Yeah. So, I'll get on that account when I'm in Facebook jail.
Okay.
Just wreak havoc from over there.
Most everyone I talk to has some account of this anyway, so I imagine you're not the
Yeah.
only three. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what does the group? You mentioned the group. Even though, what do you guys do here in Baltimore? I mean, is there a pretty good following here in Baltimore?
When I first started the group, I just sent a lot of invites to friends of mine on Facebook, and I've just had a lot of friends who are into punk rock who are also libertarian. I've always felt like the two go hand in hand. So I feel like there is a pretty decent number of punk rock libertarians here in Maryland.
Okay. Other than the podcast that you guys, is there any other things you guys they do? Meet as group, hold events, anything to that nature?
I mean, Jared and I visited Porkfest, and then
Okay.
I've done that a few times, kind of rep the brand. But
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, as far as
We'd like to throw a festival, but or not necessarily a festival, but like a concert or
Some type of
something
event?
like that.
Yeah. Okay.
But we just haven't really sat down and really planned it out or made the connections needed. I mean, I'm sure we could.
Actually, we did have one concert at my house.
we did have a basement show.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is some years ago.
This was old Anarchy
Yeah.
Basement.
I'm imagining that there wasn't enough people to,
Raise money for
yeah,
something.
yeah.
No, we were just doing it to have fun. We actually had a band called A Minor Revolution over there. They were from New Hampshire.
Okay.
And then they were on tour with a band from Wales. Can't remember their name right now. I feel horrible. But at any rate, they played in my basement. My band played, and then a friend of mine's band played, and we just had a good time.
All right. Well, I was asking just so if there are events and stuff that you could tell people about them, and other than Facebook, where can people find you?
Well, you can
PRLpodcast.com.
find the podcast. Yeah, so PRLpodcast.com is our website.
Okay.
You can actually download the podcast on iTunes, any sort of podcast app you want. Pocket Cast.
Okay.
We go
Stitcher,
live.
all that
We go
stuff.
live on Pornhub.
Okay. All right.
There's an
That's not
Instagram account.
There's a Twitter account.
Twitter.
Okay.
We're on all the major social media and podcast distribution.
And I'm sure our wonderful executive producer behind the curtain back there will add all that information for you viewers out there. So.
Great.
So what's the purpose? Maybe there's a different one for each of you, but what's the purpose of the punk rock libertarians?
For me, it's spreading a message.
Okay. What's that message?
Freedom. Liberty. You can do whatever you want until you hurt somebody else. That's what it's all about. It's all about that message. It's no we're not affiliated with any particular party. We're not married to any party. It's all about spreading ideas.
Now you say you're not married to any party, but you're the punk rock libertarians.
Libertarian. I'm the guy who started it.
Okay.
I would say that it's libertarian, more of the philosophy, not the party.
Yeah.
The party is disappointed.
That is the problem.
Real ideas of liberty, they don't disappoint. They're consistent.
Gotcha. Okay.
And that's the problem that we do have a lot is where people associate us with the party.
Okay.
Because when people, a lot of people haven't heard the term libertarian outside of the Libertarian Party.
Yes.
So they don't understand that it's like Bergman said, it's a philosophy. The party, it does sometimes follow that philosophy. But, we're not, if the Democratic Party decided to become libertarian tomorrow, we'll go right with them. We don't care about any of that. At least I don't. And I'm pretty sure Bergman or Phil over here don't either. But, we care more about the principles.
We also don't see that
philosophy.
happening tomorrow either.
And we don't see that. Yeah, we definitely don't see that happening. But, it's more about the ideas.
And I think that's a good point that you mentioned, because I found that when I've been out as a libertarian candidate, first off, people don't even know what libertarians are. Yeah. And then I would have guessed that too, though, being attached to the party or some connection thereof. So I'm glad you mentioned that.
Sure.
Speaking of the Libertarian Party, how you guys active in it here in the state? Give me your involvement, thoughts, dreams, anything.
I'm the only one.
I'm throwing out meat for you to chew on. So go ahead.
I'm the only one. I think I'm the only one who's in the party
out
of all of us. I think I'm the only one who's actually in the party, and I'm the Maryland coordinator for the Mises Caucus in the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, I'm still registered Republican to vote for Ron Paul in 2012.
I'm a libertarian other, or whatever it is.
But are you official pays doing member of the actual Libertarian Party?
No, I don't think I paid dues.
Yeah. I'm still in my first year, and like I said, last year was when I first signed up. It's not even been a year yet.
Okay.
But I'm not really involved. That's how I met Charles. I attended the first Maryland Libertarian little get together in Baltimore County, and it was cool. So kind of made connections and stuff.
Do you guys do anything with any of the local libertarian groups at all?
No,
not really.
One dude that's on our podcast, Kyle Wagner, he does a lot of stuff with that.
Okay.
But he's sort of moving away from that now.
Yeah, he's kind of moving away from it now that we don't have a party. He's kind of like he's just not as pumped up about the local Libertarian Party now that we're not recognized.
Yeah.
Because we still got to collect those signatures in order to get recognized in the state of Maryland as an official party.
Yep. Now, just in case if you're watching, you don't understand what we're talking about, the Libertarian Party didn't get the required votes at the highest office. In this case, it would have been governor to have ballot access for 2020. So they'll be required to get the signatures to do so.
Do we have any status update on that?
We're still collecting signatures. We're trying to organize parties to go out and sign. I'm sure there's other people, a lot of libertarians.
Sick, because no one's asked me to sign yet.
Yeah, and no one's asked me to sign either. So I think a lot of libertarians seem to be in the state of Maryland are on the Upper Eastern Shore, from what I can attest to. Yeah, that seems to be a lot of where they come from. Just an outsider looking in at the state party. I don't really see a lot of libertarians around here, close to Baltimore. It's mostly, it seems to be farther away you get from the city.
Makes sense.
Well, I know there's, and Charles may be able to verify that. I know in the southern part, is it Anne Arundel County or?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. There's a pretty big.
There's
a lot of active libertarians down there.
Okay.
If you can find them on Facebook. And
yeah,
stuff.
they do
a little more active.
A monthly meeting in Millersville. I do know that.
Okay.
I'm hoping to attend one soon.
Okay. So they're libertarians if you or vice versa. If you're for signatures or whatever reason, these gentlemen now are on the front lines of it. So why don't you connect up with them or look them up, and we'll try to give you guys the information to go the other way as well. Because I've heard from some of the party folks that they're in the process or something to that effect. I know they were waiting a bit on the lawsuit, and I think that's gone
I think so too.
Yeah. So we were talking a little bit off camera to start with, just to give the folks a flavor of what the show is. What's the hottest topic for you folks right now? Or if you were doing a podcast tonight, what would you go chewing on?
Definitely the school shooting in Colorado. So
okay,
put
it out there for in case.
Yeah, so in Colorado, a school was shot up, and 8 people were wounded. 1 person was murdered, And then apparently it's not being talked about a whole lot because one of the shooters was transgender.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard something on. I don't know how true it was. I just saw that earlier today, so I don't know if how true. But yeah, it would make sense for them to stop talking about it immediately once it doesn't fit their narrative. You see a lot of people, like with the shooting that happened up in right here in Baltimore. It happened in, I think, in northern Baltimore. You guys remember that? It was at the Amazon facility, or it was someplace right north of here, and it was I think a black female shooter. She shot up someplace, and it was like five people got shot, and I think one died, and it made national news until they found out the identity of the shooter, and then it kind of just went away. And no one talked about it ever again. Yeah, so like, this happened I think earlier late last year.
Amazon?
I can't remember exactly the details.
Amazon got hit by a tornado. I remember that.
No. This was after that. But yeah, it's just they look for. I mean, it's just a commonplace. They look for, and the media does. They look for shooters or white male, any type of AR-15 style gun. That's what they look for.
What was this Colorado shooting done with?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't know if the details came out on that or not. It could be an AR-15, but I'm not sure. It's kind of like fresh. It just happened, so the details are kind of coming out slowly. That would be
interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, it's the media just wants it for as long as it serves their purpose. And
well, when you think about it, like guns have been around for a really long time. So have schools. You know, why do you think
maybe too long?
Why do you think all of a sudden there's this trend of school shootings and really mass shootings in general?
Well, it's Joe Biden and his gun-free zones.
No, I mean really, who could you blame it on? I mean,
it's the media.
So you think it's the fact that there are gun-free zones?
No, I was just joking.
I don't know.
But no, it has to be. It's the media. The media, people are just they're mentally disturbed and they want attention.
So you think people are just trying to get their day of it and their 15 minutes of fame?
Yeah, I mean that to me that's what it is. The media keeps talking about it, and they know they're gonna be on the news cycle, and they'll make international news if they shoot up and murder people like that. That's the way.
I'm sure there's a lot of different factors.
Of course.
You know, I don't know if you mentioned psychological drugs or psychiatric drugs and
psychotropic drugs. Yeah.
And just like the general sort of ethos that we live under, this sort of loose, there's not a very strong, following of the principles of liberty, right? So I mean, that's sort of, I feel like everything kind of springs out of a respect for property, a respect for, human self-ownership, that sort of thing. And when that goes into flux, maybe that has something to do with, people just a disrespect for human life, that sort of thing.
Well, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you were saying that the media is what's producing these shooters.
I think the fact that the media covers it so well because they want to use it to push anti-gun legislation, that they know that these people who are just, I mean, they're mentally disturbed, they're seeking attention, and they know that their name and their picture is going to be in every newspaper, every single news article, and for at least what? I mean, God, until it serves their purpose,
A news cycle.
Yeah, a news cycle, whether it be 24 hours or whether that's, for the next few months. They just want to, I mean, look at that happened in Christchurch shooting. I mean, the guy literally attached a GoPro camera to his helmet and just went through on a massacre. And he captured every second of what happened, his drive over, his drive to, every single person he shot and killed, you saw. Wow. You saw a firsthand. It was almost like a video game, And they want more detail. They want to it keeps on upping each. The next shooting always seems to kind of up it, and I just feel like they want the more gruesome, the more they can get people to talk about them, and they know the media, for right or for wrong, they'll keep blowing it up, and that's how they get their attention. And that's just how it is to me. I could be completely wrong, but that's just my opinion on it.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a number of factors.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to point out that you didn't see this happening, a long time ago. I mean, it would happen occasionally. You'd had the Kent State not Kent State.
They don't want you to. They don't want you to hear about.
Well, they don't want you to hear about Kent State.
there was
but
a Kent State shooting.
Was
but
it the
not
University
yet.
of Texas, like the guy that got up into the sniper nest or whatever?
Yeah, and I think he killed like
tower.
16 people or something.
Yeah, but he actually just had like a brain tumor. Is what they found. Yeah.
Wow.
He actually wrote a note saying like, I don't know what I'm doing. I am out of control, but examine my brain once I'm dead.
Wow.
And
that was
pretty
like
nuts.
the 1960s.
Yeah, it was in the 60s. But anyways, that's not the case now. Now it's just like, I mean, obviously these people are disturbed. Like you don't go and kill a bunch of people without being disturbed. But the question is, what's causing the disturbance? And what is making this form of violence, the one that they tend to choose, which I think Phil kind of.
Yeah, I mean, think about
what you touched on a little. Yeah.
I mean, look at the glorification of the military. I mean, from movies, you're a hero, you fight and die for your country, you kill people, and it's fine. I mean, you go through 13 years, a butcher's dozen worth of public indoctrination where it tells you it's okay. Thou shalt not kill doesn't apply when you have a green uniform on and you're sent overseas. It doesn't apply,
Right.
and it's just glorified. I mean, look, the guy who shot up the school in Virginia, in Florida, he had his JRTC shirt on when he did it, and they're pushing the military recruiters are trying to get these kids younger and younger, and now it's like the 12 year. They want to expand it to when they're like 12 years old. The military recruiters can start talking to you and contacting students and stuff. And I mean,
It's insane.
Yeah, and actually, it brings up another topic. Well, my daughter started school. We had to sign a paper saying like, is it okay if we give your information to military recruiters for your kid? I'm like, what?
Wow.
And it was a waiver, and I was like,
You're like,
no, like not at all.
How old's your daughter?
She's in kindergarten.
Okay, no,
And
what?
and apparently there's testing too, like the ABCAB.
It's kind of the ABFAB.
ABFAB. Yeah, there you go.
It as bad as that is, it's kind of a good sign because it means that they're getting more desperate to recruit people,
They
right?
are desperate.
You don't just have like every 18-year-old signing up for war now.
Yeah.
They're realizing like, for what? Like, why am I doing that? So now they got to like go deeper and deeper and deeper to indoctrinate people earlier and earlier, which is scary, but at least like it kind of shows that we're making a little progress.
Well, see, now they have women convinced that the ultimate goal of feminism, its ultimate goal is being able to kill people just like men kill people, and that's why they want to say, oh, women need to be in the military, like, and they need to be drafted too. Like that's sexist to only draft men, and it's like, what? Like that's not the ultimate goal of feminism, but they treat it as such. A lot of people now they want to politicians they think that the draft should come back. And not only that, but draft women too. And feminists always say, yeah, it's sexist to just think that women can't go to war like the way a man can. It's just crazy. And I think that also has a lot to do with these rash of shootings you see. And people want to say it's the guns, but I mean, take away guns, and there was a huge knife attack in China that happened. Yeah. That guy killed 30 people with a knife in a subway station. I'm pretty sure it happened. And you don't hear about that. No one talks about that. The only thing you do is you get these funny memes from in England or in London where it's illegal to own anything that's like a pointy in public.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because England banned guns, and then they stopped using the guns. Then knives become, and now what I understand, it's in London at least, it's
you can get arrested.
There's a knife ban. Yeah,
there's
a knife ban on. Now you had some interesting looks over there, Matt. Well,
no. That's just how he looks.
Okay. All right.
No, yeah, I think in London, or I think all knives are banned. As far as carrying them around.
You have to register your chef's knife.
Yeah, exactly.
Like scissors, anything.
Yeah, or maybe you could have a pocket knife, but it can't be locking.
I don't even think you can have that, man. Honestly, because the stuff like because London police.
Dangerous.
They'll go on Facebook and they'll post pictures of like, this is what we took off the streets today,
and it's like a sharpened down like scissor. You're like, what?
It's like a bunch of like safety scissors from like a kid's kindergarten.
Are people making shanks to carry on the road?
They are.
Okay. All right.
It's funny. It's sad, but it's funny.
Well, it's as soon as 3D printing becomes regularly available, and inexpensive to own. You're going to see a lot more of just like homemade stuff especially if they start banning things.
Well, they're already starting to ban 3D printing.
Yeah, well, they tried to in the last, the 3D printed weapons, guns, at least here in the state of Maryland.
Ghost guns, scary ghost guns.
Yes.
Wait, what are you saying? They tried to ban 3D printing, or just?
I'm saying that's going to be the next
blueprints.
thing. That's going to be the next thing. You're going to have to be registered in order to own a 3D printer.
That's going to be tough to pull off.
Think about it. They do the same thing with MRI machines. And I think it's only within
I can't buy my own MRI machine?
No. You have to be registered, and you can only own one within I'm trying to think if it's a 1 mile or a 10-mile radius. There's only
can you make a bomb?
one MRI
Can you make a bomb out of it?
I don't know.
Do you know the reasoning for?
I think the reasoning was it was kind of.
It's probably just some protectionist stuff.
Well, yeah, for the hospitals. So you can't have hospitals or testing centers. You can't do it for cheap.
I don't think that's the same arena, though. I think we're talking more.
I know.
I mean, 3D printing is
made me think about
everyone has. I mean, there's a lot of artists that have 3D printers. There's a lot of machinists. It's a device that a lot of people have. A lot of applications. If they start making people register them. That would be insane. To
me, I think that's the way we're going. I mean, I'm shocked it hasn't been, because look at it. You think of bump stocks. Bump stocks are now banned, and it's just, if they find anything that's associated with gun or gun culture, they're going to try to chip away at it.
But you are still able to buy AR-15 lowers and create your own gun.
For now.
I'm just saying,
wait till another Christchurch happens in the United States. Just watch the sweeping legislation that's going to come, especially if there's a Democratic president who's going to declare it a national emergency because they followed Trump's blueprint for how to create a crisis.
Well, you brought up an interesting when you started that. I don't know if you remember it or not, but I think it was sometime in the mid-'90s. The head of the NRA at the time was being questioned about the violence and he said that he stated publicly that he thought that there were those in the government and other places like the media that were comfortable with a certain amount of violence happening because it gave them their rallying cry for their crusade.
Yeah, it serves purpose, man. Never let a good crisis go to waste.
That Rob Emanuel, I think, said that.
Yeah.
Yep. Anything else? What do you out there that's hot on your gentlemen's plates, or just want a general rant and rave? Huh? What's your general rant and rave here?
I think I just did that. Okay. So. I'll let these
Matt,
other guys.
You got a general one for right now?
We gave Phil some beer, and now he definitely got his rant in.
Personally, I'm pretty big against intellectual property.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like once an idea is shared, it's kind of out there. And you can't really steal an idea, because if I take it, your idea, you still have it, but only I have it too.
Yeah.
So I don't think I think the term intellectual property is like a fallacy. And it was only given that term to, falsely declare it as property when it's not. To kind of legitimize it.
A bit. Well, and I think that goes a little bit with what Phil was talking about when you shot off on the MRI part. I was curious, and I think as you were asking if it was a safety issue or what typically happens in our form of what this capitalistic or that we supposedly had is people who make money off of currently owning MRI machines do whatever they can to keep them limited and whatever so that nobody else can make any money from them. And probably, I think the intellectual property part is probably used a lot of times to, hey, look, if you're making money off of your show, what's, you want to keep other shows from the competition.
It's granting a monopoly.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It's granting a monopoly over a specific idea.
There you go.
Which, everyone rails against monopolies. Everyone hates Amazon. Everyone hates McDonald's.
Not me.
Well, yeah. I mean, not me either. But, when you talk about intellectual property, you say, look, you're granting a monopoly over this idea. People are like, well, with what would happen without intellectual property? Wouldn't it just be mayhem? Wouldn't people just be stealing ideas? And it's
I think it's quite the opposite.
Right.
People say that intellectual property creates innovation. But now I think it stifles innovation because you can't just like take this current idea and just like add to it and create something better. And I feel like if you could do that like all the time, it's like so much new, crazy, good stuff would be coming out all the time. You know, it's like, you know, I feel like, you know, I'm all about free markets, you know, and, you know, intellectual property is like not free.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you mentioned something earlier when we were talking, when Phil was talking a little bit about the people.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Just kidding, Phil.
People not respecting or having the ideas of liberty, meaning personal property rights and all those kinds of things.
Yeah, I think people just don't have just a proper understanding of these things. And especially, one thing that's really bugs me is when people start calling things rights.
Yes.
So, like, you hear a lot now, like, everyone has a right to health care. And while, you know, it sounds really nice, and, you know, we hate the idea of, like, the old lady that's dying in her house that can't afford health insurance, if you look at it from a purely philosophical level, and you actually look at what does it mean to call something a right? Well, a right means that you're basically guaranteed that thing, right? And so if you say that you have a right to health care, what you're saying is you have a right to someone providing you that health care, which essentially means slavery, right? So if you have the right to say, like, okay, this doctor has to perform health care on me, and if he refuses to do it, and then you force him to do it, that's what we would call slavery, right?
Thank you, gentlemen, for joining me again, and hopefully we'll have you back many times, and we'll come over and jump on your show and find out how it is in your jungles. Very soon.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
definitely.
Thank you for joining me. Thank you, folks out there in TV land, as always, for joining us. We'll see you next time on In, Around, and Through Maryland Politics.
You're watching Maryland Politics here on TV Free Baltimore.
Hey there, folks. This is Lenny Rudo from Fish Talk Magazine, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore.
Welcome to TV Free Baltimore's Books and Authors.
Hello, this is Paul Stefan, and welcome to another edition of Books and Authors. Today, we're going to have with us a gentleman who wrote this book, Shocked and Amazed on and Off the Midway. And we're going to have him explain to you what Midway is, what Sideshow is. He's devoted well over 20 years, going on 30 years of his life to this project. And he'll enlighten us about what used to be a big part of Americana and is now fading and morphing into something else. And that is James Taylor. Welcome, James.
Nice to be on.
Yeah, okay. So we're going to ask you, again, to explain to our audience. We wanted to read this book. What's it about?
Jeez. The Midway tradition, the carnival tradition in America is somewhat a fading enterprise, if you will, but it's more changing into a different kind of entity in the face of just so much entertainment. Circuses used to be huge in this country. Carnivals used to be huge in this country. But it's not just TV and the movies and radio, it's all of this. It's all of that cell phone stuff, all that smartphone technology. And there's just so much going on everywhere that carnivals and circuses have a tough time competing.
Well, when you wrote the first edition of the book, what was, we said the basis on that, what will people see inside the book when they read it? And then we'll compare the two editions, but let's start with the first one, the origins of the project.
Yeah, the origins of the project are such that, well, gee, the typical question asked of me is whether or not I had any childhood experience with this, whether I grew up with the circuses and the carnivals. And sort of brutally, no, not at all. My parents were not carnival and circus people. They did not take me to these things. It wasn't what we did. It was not what my father was into, which out of the 50s, that meant that was not what my mother was into.
Right.
But when my father passed away in the late 80s, my mother took up with an old carnival guy, a guy by the name of Jerry Farrow. And I thought Jerry was the most hilariously outrageous human being I'd ever met in my life. I mean, it was one crazy story, or jackpot, as the carnival people call them, which basically means any story that's embellished, that ends or could have ended with, and we lived, because really nobody wants to pay to listen to a long story about your happiness. They want to have an experience that sounds like, I can't believe he lived through this. That's what most jackpots and most carnival stories are. And Jerry was full of that. He had 1,000,001 of those crazy stories. He'd been in the carnival his whole life.
Right.
And I guess it was after he'd been with my ma for a couple of years. And I asked him one day, I was like, Jerry, where are the books on this stuff? And he was like, well, there ain't none. I'm like, what do you mean there ain't none? There's books on everything. And he goes, nah, I know the kind of book you want, and that book's not out there. But you're a writer, write your own damn book. And it was like somebody throwing a light switch for me. I'd been in the publishing game already for 20 years, and here this old carnival guy is telling me, get out there and just do what you do. And I'd been warned off by a number of people who had background in carnival and circus history that it was going to be a long row for me to hoe. It was going to be a tough slog, because these people have been burned by media 1,000,001 times. And Jerry's lying to me when I was talking to him about that. He was like, nah, they're going to talk to you for about 1.5 minutes. They're going to know you're legit, and they'll tell you anything you want to know. And they have. And I was lucky enough of getting involved in this in the early to mid 90s that I managed to catch the last of the performers who were out of that golden era between World War I and World War II. All those kind of performers who would have been in Todd Browning's Freaks and were in those amazing shows that you always see documented nowadays in books like Shocked and Amazed. But they don't have the interviews I got. So there is that.
It started as a journal, though, didn't it, or a magazine?
Yeah, the book you just held up in all its glory is actually the collector's edition from the first 9 volumes. The best of was out back in 2002 by a different publisher, and it had a lot of amazing things in it. They emphasize the old-timey aspects of the business, and really the collector's edition does the same thing. I didn't concentrate on that extensively with the more modern and the more recent stuff. You'll see things in there kind of from the 50s and 60s. But once you start getting into the serious decline of the carnival midways in the 70s and 80s and up till today, I didn't do a lot with that era. It was really sort of dying out on the carnival midways by the time the 60s and early 70s rolled in. You could see a lot, but it wasn't what most people who consider themselves historians and fans of the carnival, it really wasn't the golden age that World War I, the World War II era was.
All right, well, again, for the audience, explain to them who may not know what it is. What is Midway?
Yes. If you've ever been to a carnival, if you've ever been to a circus, on a circus, it's between the front door where you go in and the big top. In its day, there used to be that midway, that distance between going into the show, going through the marquee, and going into the big top. Because it's not really the big top, it's the big top, because that's what it is. It's not a tent. Tent's what Boy Scouts stay in. Tops are what circus and carnival people perform under, with sidewall that they can take down.
Okay.
And you'd go along that midway in the circus, and you'd see games, and you'd see the sideshow. And that sideshow, which when it morphed into the carnivals became the 10 in 1, the 10 acts in one show. And you'd pay a separate admission. You'd go into the carnival sideshow, and then the circus, you'd also go into the menagerie. They'd have the animals in there as well. Examples of, they'd have the hippo maybe, but they might, they might have an elephant. They might have one of the lions. They'd have an assortment of the menagerie in the sideshow. And then the rest of the sideshow acts, the sword swallowers, the fire breathers, all those America's Got Talent, Ripley's Believe It or Not, Guinness World's Record people, all those people would be there. And the bigger the circus, the more acts you could have. The carnival's a later incarnation than the circus. Circus was invented back in the late 1700s by a gentleman by the name of Astley in Great Britain, and it came here to the U.S. and was one of Britain's most successful exports, I suppose. Right. And for years, those circuses traveled the byways, if you will. There sure wasn't any highways in the 17 and 1800s in the U.S., not by today's standards. And those circuses, those old mud shows, would travel by wagon from town to town. And they would set up and tear down overnight. They were literally the city that moved by night. And the logistics were so amazing in your typical circus that, Kaiser Wilhelm studied Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, which was a Wild West circus after a fashion. He studied it for logistics before he got involved in World War I. So, the circus teaches people some cruel things, if you want to look at it that way, I suppose.
And the carnival was later, and did it really start at the Columbia Exhibition?
Yes, it did. The Columbia Exposition in 1893 is credited with being the birthplace of American Carnival. It took a few years for it to get its act together, literally and figuratively, but you got to figure at the 1893 Exposition, it was the first Ferris wheel in the U.S., and it was the first time that all those show people got smashed together in an area and made all the money. The history of museums is really kind of funny because when you start talking circus and you talk museums, which of course preceded circus somewhat, although not completely as the entities that circus became, where it's all show as opposed to exhibition. You have that going on. But circus and the origins of the museum business before it split, which I'll get to in a second, and carnival, and the whole novelty and variety in vaudeville and burlesque, that whole sort of novelty and variety enterprise has crossed a lot of paths and had a lot of offshoots and things come into it and then branch off from it, not the least of which were the museums. I mean, in their origins, they were the Kunstkammer, they were the cabinets of wonder, they were, those collections that apothecaries and alchemists and doctors and
royalty. There were people like barons and counts, they would have their own cabinets
Peter
of wonder.
the Great.
Yeah, cabinets of wonders.
Yeah, I mean, Peter the Great's Kunstkammer still exists.
Wow.
We do have the advantage in Baltimore of having the oldest building in the Western Hemisphere actually built specifically as a museum.
Yeah,
at the Peel. Yep, the Peel Museum, which is now the Peel Center.
It's still great, though.
Oh, it's a wonderful building. Oh, it's an amazing building. And Charles Wilson Peel, who was the creator of that Peel tradition in museums, and great paleontologist in his era, and painter of presidents, and pals with Thomas Jefferson and all the rest of it. Sure. He created the Peel Museums as a way to educate the great unwashed, basically. In that era when, when America was being created, the idea was, well, we'd be yeoman farmers, as Jefferson would have it, but we needed to make sure that everyone was educated enough to vote intelligently. So, of course, these museums were going to be coupled with the public schools. They were going to be those institutions that fostered that. Well, you find out something pretty quick in the museum business when you tout yourself as educational with a capital E. Them yeoman farmers don't give a crap about education.
Right.
They really don't. They want to be amused. They want to be entertained. They want to have something to take them away from what the drudgery of the day-to-day equals. They want the exotic, which is the core to all of this. I mean, you got to figure, human life is four things. I mean, it's being born, it's eating to stay alive, it's making the babies, because if you're doing it otherwise, that's showbiz, or amusement, distraction, and dying. That's the four things that life is, right there.
Okay.
And everything else is entertainment, amusement, distraction, and driving away the boredom. Well, when those collections were first created, originally they were created as ways for the people in the know to demonstrate to others of their kind, others who had knowledge and secrets and or position politically as royalty or otherwise. It was a way for them to demonstrate that they knew, that they understood what this global expansion, this world exploration was really heralding. And of course, it was heralding a future for Western Europe. So that's where a lot of these collections were coming out of.
And a lot of it, I think, when you compare it today for some people, they want to try to understand, it's like, would be like a natural history museum.
Yeah, well, in its
Fossils,
origins,
rocks, stuff like that.
They would have all those things,
bones,
and they would have all the stuff that mostly we'd go to a Ripley's Believe It or Not to see today,
right.
Because those early Kunstkammer, as those cabinets of wonder, they were all encompassing. Well, after a while, once science sort of got to that place where it realized, some of this stuff is BS. I mean, no, really, come on.
Like a Fiji mermaid.
Boy, we could get into a discussion about gaffes and what reality is. Geez,
I don't know, we'll have time for that. I just wanted to define what a gaffe is.
Oh, yeah. But we'll talk about that in a second, too. But they reached that point in the museum tradition where there was that realization that entertainment and showbiz, amusement, might not necessarily be good to combine. Well, that was the split ultimately between Charles Willson Peale and his kids, Rembrandt and Rubens, who realized, as Barnum did, that unless you convince people they need to learn things, it's tougher to get this crap through to them. So out of that tradition comes Barnum. Now, Barnum was younger than Charles Willson Peale, but he was on par with the kids. They were a little older than he was as well, but still, he looks around and he realizes, there's this old Yankee tradition, because he's a Yankee. I mean, he's out of the Northeast. He's like, there's this tradition of humbuggery, which in the 19th century was not lies, was not, I'm hoaxing you to get the better of you, to take your money. Barnum wore with pride the title King of the Humbugs, because practical jokes and humbugs were a big form of entertainment because they cut across all cultural lines.
Now, humbug in that time, what did it really mean to that era?
Essentially, it was a practical joke. But the way a humbug is supposed to work where a number of people are aware that something's going on, but they're going to go along for the ride.
So was it like a kind of a thing?
Yeah.
A wink?
A lot of it was wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
But in that era especially, and given the nature of what most humbugs were, they were the kind of thing at the end of it, you laughed at yourself for having been taken in by it. It wasn't literally like a scam or being bilked, or it wasn't any of that. When you went into Barnum's museum, the American Museum, which was the Disney World of its day, you had to figure in Barnum's museum, in the first 5 years that museum was open in Manhattan, he had the equivalent of the entire population of the United States go to that museum. That's a better track record than Disney World had in its first 5 years.
Right.
And now granted, the population of the US was smaller, but that meant those people had to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. And they did that because Barnum gave them something new to see all the time. It was like a cross between 2 or 3 Smithsonians and half a dozen Ripley's Believe It or Nots. I mean, all this stuff crammed in. You could see live theater in his museum, in the American Museum. and see all this stuff there. I mean, it truly was the entertainment mecca of its day. When the ships came from Europe bringing the immigrants here, you'd pull into the New York harbor, and and believe me, I have seen this plaque. It's not in New York anymore. I know the collector who has it. Okay. And there's a plaque. It's probably 6 foot tall by about 3 feet wide, and in raised letters on that enormous plaque, all it says is "See Barnum's First." That's all it says. Wow. And anybody who got off the boat sees that. That was their welcome to America. Barnum.
Interesting.
Their welcome is a cross between the Smithsonian and Ripley's Believe It or Not. And why not? I mean, I think arguably, but not too strenuous an argument, you could say that Barnum invented Manhattan as that city that never sleeps, as the city of showbiz where everybody's on stage as much as. I mean, that was Barnum. I mean, he was that, I'm going to have everything be larger than life.
Well, let me ask you a question about him. Do you feel that, is he the one you would credit to say he merged Sideshow with circus, or was anybody doing it before him?
That gets into another set of arguments.
But a quick opinion.
A quick opinion. I would say that to misquote, but the spirit of, Barnum's line was that he never really invented much of anything.
Right.
All he did was see the best way a thing could be done. He drummed things better. He puffed things up better than any other showman of his era. He could take an idea that you had that would probably have made you a little money, and he could make $1 million off of it. He just knew how to do that. You have to figure that when he brought Jenny Lind to the United States, no sound at all. There's no radio. There's no phonograph. There's nothing. Right. Nobody has any idea what this woman sounds like outside of what they're being told. We had no knowledge of opera in this country, which is what she sang. I mean, it was music hall for us here. Right. High opera was nothing.
Right.
By the time she lands in New York Harbor, there's a crowd on that harbor equal to the population of the city of New York to welcome her. This is just a singer that Barnum has decided he needs to plug to have her come here to the U.S. so that he can make both of them very rich.
Yeah.
And she was worried about it. She was spooked because as far as she was concerned, what she knew from what she could read about Barnum, this was going to be a kind of a crass exercise. But as he showed her, well, you want to be rich or don't you? You want to get famous or don't you? And he made her, compared to the fame she already had in Europe, which was substantial, he made her internationally famous in a way that truly was uncalled for the era.
And that
was
way,
totally uncalled for.
You would say at that point he became the first and greatest of the times American promoter or impresario.
Oh God, yes. Oh yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
Because that gave him legitimacy now with the people who were not the great unwashed, but the society people.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But you have to figure in that time, two things were bandied about. One of which was there's a political cartoon, editorial cartoon of Barnum from that era with Jenny Lind, where basically they are showing Barnum having turned her into one of his freaks to exhibit in his museum, and Barnum had that battle his whole life with people who considered him this crass, anything for a buck sort of character. And you have to kind of step back and say, well, it's the showbiz. Really? I mean, insult me with more compliments, please. We all act today like the term exploitation is this big no-no and this, don't. In the 19th century, the term exploitation was used interchangeably with promotion. I mean, I have read numerous times where, this fight producer and agent exploited his talent, as in the bare-knuckle boxer, exploited that talent to fame and fortune. Well, that doesn't sound like the exploitation we'd use today. Right. It sounds like we made this guy rich. And even Tom Thumb, you know.
Of course, General Tom Thumb.
General Tom Thumb, who was exhibited as being in his 20s when he was 11. You know, he still hasn't sort of put on as much height as he's going to.
Right.
And you know, Barnum made Stratton, Tom Thumb, and his parents very, very wealthy. But you know, Tom Thumb wasn't, you know, Stratton wasn't ignorant of all the facts. His line was, and he stuck with Barnum his entire career as much as, his line was, well, PT does tend to Barnumize things.
Talk about Jeannie and Al.
Oh, geez, Jeannie and Al. I never got a chance to meet Al.
He was
Al
already
had passed
gone, was
away.
he?
Yeah, Al Toomey, billed as the American giant, especially important with a last name like Toomey during World War II, when, you know, the United States is at war with Italy. You know, people get kind of hinky about that stuff. But he was billed as the American giant, 8'5.5" of giant human being. But Jeannie was a half girl. I mean, born without legs.
Right.
And she had one of her hands was actually both of her hands were deformed. One of them was only like the fingers had melded, and it was really kind of like this. And her other fingers were kind of bent. But she had been a victim, apparently, of band syndrome, where prior to her birth, her mother's uterine tissue wrapped around her legs and cutting off the circulation. Basically, they were amputated before she was even born. I mean, when she was being formed, she was being formed without legs as much as. But when she was born, her parents, because you're talking you're going into the Great Depression. You know, I mean, she's born in the teens, but by the time she's getting any sort of like you know, 10, 11, 12 years old, I mean, the economy's rolling in bad. Her parents weren't working, and they put her on the road. They took her out to like little pumpkin festivals and everything else. And as she put it, she had a ball. She loved it. I mean, people are giving her presents and just loving the fact that here's this little kid's doing handstands without legs and stuff. And
I hate to say it, but it didn't hurt her that when she did grow up, she was an attractive woman too.
Oh, that never hurts. That never hurts. But there are different types of freaks as well.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're born without legs, if you're a legless wonder, you know, half girl, half boy, as
Johnny Eck.
Johnny Eck from Baltimore.
And with that, because I'm trying to keep things quick here, the segue into the World of Wonders, which has gone on for about 70 years.
Oh, easy.
You know, and Wednesday night we were all privileged to have here in Baltimore, for the first time, these people. I talked to the current owner, Tommy Breen, and he said, maybe in my 15 years with WOW, we played maybe somewhere in Maryland once.
Yeah.
And I said, you guys need to get up here. People need to see what you do under a tent.
What?
It was a great show.
Yeah.
And again, it's evolving into variety. What I wanted to bring to you, and I think you were talking about full circle, but it came to me this morning when looking in this book again, folks. I'll keep referring, you got to read this book. That
I should have my own copy.
The chapter about the Strand. And in the 1890s, 1900, whatever that stuff is in there, it's lifted right from the copy back then, is they were calling those people variety artists.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And now with talking to Trixie Turvey, who does a great hula hoop act, she said the same thing to me. She said, we're becoming a variety show.
Yeah.
You don't see the freaks. You don't see so much, you know, the wax animals or the gaffed animals or anything. They have a petting zoo. They have all kinds of stuff. They emphasized to me it's very family friendly.
Yeah.
This thing that's evolving. Yeah. In fact, her story was an example. They said years ago when she wanted to join the Sideshow with World Wonders, you know, Tommy said he had to pitch that to Chris Christ because he said, hey, Hoopsters is not Sideshow. It's not old Sideshow.
Oh, yeah. Well,
a strong woman wouldn't have been old Sideshow.
Yeah. Well, what's really funny is that it kind of depends on what sort of 10-year period about the Sideshow you're talking about. I mean, there were strong man, strong woman acts that worked Sideshow, but they weren't particularly common. Usually you saw them at the amusement parks. You saw them at Coney Island.
Circus, too.
Yeah, circus. but there was a lot of bleed over, but it depended on the era you were in it. I mean, for example, with Chris's era is mostly the 60s through now. And Chris is more or less retired from the business, with the exception of what he's done with Tommy Breen, I think, at the Show on the Road. Ward Hall, who preceded Chris as the inventor of the World of Wonders, with his first partner, Harry Leonard, that goes back to the late 40s and the early 50s.
Right.
Well, in that era, you'd have seen the tail end of those other variety talents, but you'd have started to see Sideshow listing more and more toward hardcore. The hardcore, like what we consider Sideshow acts now, the fire breathers and the sword swallowers, and the people walking up ladders of swords and all the rest of that stuff. But when you go back into the golden era, you had sideshows with Hawaiian bands, you had glass blowers in sideshows, you had tattoo artists in sideshows, you had mentalists, you had psychics. I mean, you still have magicians in sideshow. You don't see a lot of that in sideshow anymore, except as far as somebody else who does another act.
Right, might do a trick or two. They used to do that in WoW too.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And mostly that'll be like sort of low rent illusion kind of stuff. But the era that Chris comes out of, it was much more hardcore in terms of those acts. So he sees Sideshow as a much more hardcore exercise. Right. And then you get into the more recent era with the club acts. Well, a lot of those guys take their clues from the Jim Rose era in the late 80s, early 90s, where, as far as they were concerned, it was all about gross out acts. Well, yes and no, because if you can't sell that act as don't lose your lunch while you watch this, you're not doing it very well either. So for Jim Rose and that type of performer, it was all about making it as funny as you possibly could and making it as outrageous as you possibly could. So people are like, like one of these, or if you pass out, it's a fainting ovation kind of thing.
Well, interesting. I think we should do, I don't know if you ever do a third edition, and I'm going to be interviewing this man, I hope. But a good transitional figure is, again, I had the privilege of meeting in Gettysburg, was Harley Newman.
Oh, Harley.
He talked about how he, Sideshow was gone. He basically had to learn so many tricks by himself, and now there's a Sideshow school.
Yep. A number of them.
Yeah, all right. Well, I was thinking of the one in New York, or
Coney Island.
And he said that he did what in the late that 70s, 80s era, it was a lot of college campus stuff and little clubs and stuff, because the venues weren't there, and he wasn't traditional Sideshow where he could do the marvelous things he's done, and he holds a number of Guinness World Records, which he's humble about. He says, I don't care about the record, but he's had over 50,000 escapes, folks. And so I definitely want to get him in here, because he does things that nobody else has done or still do. Like gets on a bed of nails, but there are only 2 nails. Totally gets himself out of saran wrap. I want to see the thing where he gets out of a straitjacket, but while he's balancing on a unicycle. Now that is rare. And I mean, I'm just saying, either one of those feats alone is hard to do. And so he's a good transitional character to getting to where we are today, what WoW is evolving into. And that's part of what I'll just bring up here quickly. The Wednesday had the raffle, and I got a few things out of it. Like, for example, and we're going to do a show on these folks too, folks. Bazaar here in Baltimore, in Hamden. You can call all kinds of great stuff, because they had a show called Oddities on TV, and they have a great store, up in New York. But right here in Baltimore, you can get this. And this is a fetal unicorn that I won, a very rare item,
It's a lovely gaff. And lovely piece of work.
Yes. And then the strong woman who was there, Luella Lynn, bent this very horseshoe, which I won in the raffle. It shows a lot of strength in this young woman who does not look anything like a female bodybuilder, believe me.
No.
You don't see muscle over muscle over muscle. And in fact, she's very glamorous, very beautiful. And then this is my own personal story, this block of wood. You can see there's a bullet in there. And James probably already knows what this is about, even though I didn't tell him the story. Is that when I was a kid, and there was there still is apparently a menagerie up in Thurmont, and at the time I was a small child, they really had performers, and the only one I remember, they were definitely Native Americans, and one gentleman called himself Chief Redbird, and his son had a rifle, and Chief put the block up against his body. His son shot the rifle, and the bullet went in. You can even see the hole where the bullet went into the block of wood.
That's an act.
And that bullet is still there.
That's an act.
And I've always kept that because if you want to impress a 5 or 6 year old kid, then or even now, because I don't know anybody doing anything like that.
Oh,
now.
it's,
you know.
I know some people who've gotten hurt doing things like that.
There are people who, magicians who try to catch bullets and died.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, that really got me started and interested in all kinds of forms of entertainment like this. But before we close and we give one more real pitch to the book, I want to give a quote, sort of what we've been talking about today that I was able to find. It says, "The lights are dimming on the midway. The ballet stage is empty and the banner line is down. But next year, the talker will be back, enticing us to see the wonders behind the tent flap. The show will return, at least in our hearts."
Very nice.
And before we say goodbye, we will say again, you can get this book. And James, I want you to tell people where they can get this. This is the hardback version, which is a little bit more money, but it's going to be more durable over time, folks. Or you can get the, big, paperback edition. It's just the same size, but it's a soft back, and it's a little cheaper. But it's eventually you're going to read it so much that it's going to get all bent out of shape. Or here, the pages are always going to stay great for you. So, James, where can they get this book?
Right now, the best way to get it is to go online to our website, www.shockedandamazed.com, all one word, all lowercase should do it. And you'll see the link to not only get the collector's edition signed, even personalized if you so desire. That immediately lowers the value of the book, but that's okay. Paperback, hardback are both available, as well as the previous volumes of the journal from Shocked and Amazed. We have in print now volumes 5 through 9, volumes 1 through 4. Sorry, aftermarket. I'd have to buy them just to get them to you. Boy, I wish I was getting residuals from those. Oh, man.
It'd be great to find those.
Yeah, it's rough. Got to do that eBay thing and go on.
Oh, really? Okay.
Antiquarian bookstores and stuff.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Real collector's items, folks.
Yeah.
And then is there any way that people can find you beyond that? Or is that just where to find you?
The best way, of course, you can connect with me on Facebook. Everybody connected on Facebook anymore. I don't do the rest of them, but Facebook sucks up enough of my
You're there,
time.
okay.
Yes, I'm there. As is Shocked and Amazed on Facebook. That's a good place to go too,
right.
Because every day we post anywhere upwards to half a dozen or a dozen items all related to the showbiz, and usually the novelty and variety end of it, backstory, and people doing unusual performances and unusual acts. So, yeah,
terrific.
It's fun stuff.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
And again, before we close, I'll let people know, because of that show we did Wednesday, we did record the show, and I did interviews with all 4 of the World of Wonders performers before the show. And eventually you'll be seeing that here on our channel and our network. I know you'll love it. The performers that already told me they can't wait to see it. So it's going to be here, and this is the only place you can see it. We are definitely a big friend of Sideshow. So until next time, Books and Authors or one of my other shows that I do, we'll see you then.
You're watching Books and Authors on TV Free Baltimore.
This is Sam with Restore Computer Repair in Baltimore, Maryland. If you're having any computer problems whatsoever with your Mac or PC, desktop or laptop, we can fix it at a guaranteed lowest price. We're located at 8701 Harford Road in Parkville, Maryland, 21234. You can reach us at 443-725-5050. That's 443-725-5050. We're open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You can reach us at www.restorecomputerrepair.com.
watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, and welcome to another show. In fact, today I would call this a special edition of our show because I'd heard about this woman and found out just a few days ago she was here in town. So I said, man, we've got to get her in here. She is an extremely talented person in the sideshow world, travels all over the world doing her various acts, which I don't know that there's any that she doesn't do, and authorities such as James Taylor of Shocked and Amazed, on and off the Midway, the authority on sideshow in the 20th century and now the 21st century, called her a queen of sideshow. And Harley Newman, a legend in sideshow, has called her a goddess. And of course, we also call her the badass queen of sideshow. And I'm speaking of Reggie Beaumarchais. Welcome, Reggie.
Oh, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Now, the first question I want to ask is, we know you had a life before sideshow. So when did you first hear about sideshow or encounter it?
Ooh, probably when I was in college, maybe 99. I started going to Los Straitjackets concerts, and they had the Pontani sisters dancing with them.
Okay.
So that became my introduction into the variety world, was through burlesque.
Okay.
And I found sideshow and just fell in love.
And here you had, of course, a respectable career.
Mm-hmm.
And is it a master's degree?
Yeah.
In disaster medicine and management?
Yes.
And was working in admissions at Philadelphia University.
Mm-hmm.
These are all really good, solid, mainstream, everyday jobs. So
Yeah.
what made you want to leave a sure thing and go into sideshow?
I'd been doing sideshow part-time, so I was just really running myself into the ground. I was going to grad school full-time, I was working, I was a single mom, and I was doing Old City Sideshow part-time. We had a monthly show, we had a couple of spots here and there, and then my grandmother got sick.
Oh my.
And I was taking care of her for a while, and one of the things that really stuck with me was the amount of regrets that she had.
Mm-hmm.
And as soon as she passed, I inherited her house, I sold it, and I had a little bit of cushion to be able to do what I wanted, and I decided I didn't want to regret anything. I didn't want to pass and have any regrets, so I just quit my job and took off and haven't looked back since.
Well, that's quite a story. That took a lot of faith there.
Yeah, you figure it out.
Yeah, because people say, hey, I have a bucket list and I wish I had done this, this, and this. But you've caught on early in life, in your 20s, to do that.
Yeah, I figured I could always get back behind a desk. It's not hard to find a desk job, but it's really hard to find an entertainment job past 40.
Yeah.
So if I was going to do it, I better do it now.
And when you started, though, who were people who taught you? What were like some of the first acts that you did?
Oh, the first act I did, of course, the Bug Buncher name.
Yes.
It was the Geek Act, entry level. We were really classic. We were complete sideshow nerds, very sticklers for the way things were done officially. So, of course, my entry level position would have to be as a geek. So, of course, doing the Geek Act, doing Fire. And then I slowly started becoming a talking act. But I did an Anatomical Wonder Act that Melvin Burkhardt had done.
Right.
Things like that. Sword Ladder. Kind of typical female sideshow acts.
Yeah, okay. So so we'd say some of the classics, except for Anatomical Wonder. I haven't seen too many women do that. But,
yeah, that's a weird one.
And then you do the dainty blockhead kind of thing, the little hammer. And
Yeah.
It's glamorous, It's not the big claw hammer and the big 10-penny nail or whatever it is, or spike, and put it up your nose. But so that's how. And then somehow you encountered Harley Newman, right?
Yeah.
And he taught you some things, I bet.
I did. I studied under Harley. We had a great workshop, and he's been a fantastic mentor. I still bother him to this day on a regular basis when I have questions or ideas, and he's great to bounce things off of because he's such a creative.
Right. I mean, that you talk about people doing things like bed of nails, which a lot of people do, and you did.
Yeah.
But he does one where it's only 2 nails.
Oh, he goes down to 1.
And he gets down to 1 now,
Yeah.
too, even 1. And, and then also things like one I really want to see, that I heard about, but I don't think there's footage of it that I've seen, is with him getting out of a straitjacket while riding a unicycle.
Oh, yeah. It's so cool. It's terrifying to watch.
Because you have done escapes from straitjackets. You've
not
done
on a
escapes from
unicycle.
chairs. But I mean, that adds an extra level of difficulty, I'll call it, because you have to maintain your balance wherever you see other people are always struggling and then, trying to get out of the thing. But he has to maintain balance on the unicycle, and not fall off while he's getting out of the straitjacket. And so that's again why he says he has so many Guinness Book records, but it doesn't. He says they tell me that, but I don't know. I don't care. But I want people to be aware of him. And now you started about 2005? Is that close?
Yeah, about 2006.
6?
Yeah.
Okay. And let's see. You've done a variety of acts, like I said. Are there any that you no longer perform?
I don't do the geek act anymore.
You don't do that one anymore.
No.
You don't eat the maggots and all that kind of stuff, the grubworms or whatever they were, and the
earthworms. I'll leave that to the new kids.
And the goldfish.
Yeah.
And all of that. That's done in your life.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you have favorites that you like to do?
I guess it really depends on the crowd. My favorites are whatever goes over the best with the audience.
Because I thought maybe you're saying because you have such a variety to pick from, but I think you probably have a larger, bag of tricks than a lot of performers.
Yeah, I mean, I can do a full 10 and 1 by myself, but the acts that I really like are the ones that I worked really hard to polish, the ones that are really good. My eye hooks act, my mental floss blockhead act.
What about barbed wire?
Oh, I do love my horsey act. Yeah, that's a good one.
I was going to say either you created that or you modified that to make it yours.
Yeah, the bed of barbed wire is Harley's inception, but the act that I do is my own.
Is your own thing.
Yeah.
Because I've seen that at least online. So.
Nobody else is doing that one. So if
that is yours. That's one that we can say that's a signature act.
Correct.
Of yours.
If someone else is doing it, they've stolen it.
Oh, okay. It's great if you see it. And are there anything that you won't do, acts that you don't want to try even?
Probably not pincushion.
I was going to ask you about that one.
Yeah, I'm not really into. I guess because the way that we came up, our particular group, like Old City Sideshow, we build ourselves completely as a blood-free show.
Oh, okay.
We wanted to make ourselves as versatile as possible from the very beginning. And the audiences, like in our experience, most of the people that are willing to pay what we deserve are not interested in horror shows.
Okay.
They're really fun, and there's a place for all of that in Sideshow. But in our experience, we had a better time doing corporate events and paying our bills than
there you go.
Grossing people to
out.
Death.
I mean, because not only is the people who do the razor blade stuff.
Yeah, the razor blade act's fun. I've never done that because it's tied too closely to magic, and I stress really hard in my show that there's no tricks in Sideshow.
Right, but I mean, you talk about the pincushion. I mean, again, as somebody who's familiar to us, Alex Dahl will sometimes do pincushion.
Yeah.
And but you also do the grinder in a couple different ways. Like I talked to you yesterday on the phone. I mean, I've seen Alex and a few other women, have it as the cod piece, as it were, even though there's no cod there. But and then also on the leather bra, with the spikes there. And you do both of those, and you've had a few accidents with that, or at least one. Right?
Oh, I had at least one. Before I had my full rig set up the way that it is now, I did have an inferior grinder piece.
Yeah.
That was just way too small and not appropriate. It was built by somebody who didn't do the act. So one of the things that I've learned is that if you want something done, you should go to people that know what they're doing.
So it is. I like to realize that it's usually people who do Sideshow don't get paid much. They do dangerous things, and sometimes maybe even considered underappreciated by the general population. You're a Sideshow performer, that kind of thing.
Yeah, what is that?
and to go through all that, what keeps you going? What do you personally get out of Sideshow?
I just love entertaining. I love being able to entertain an entire audience. I think one of the joys of Sideshow, while it does seem underappreciated, while it's pretty unknown, there's a certain level of joy that you get letting somebody see sword swallowing for the first time. that first time, a comedian, everybody's laughing. You've seen this before. Any other type of entertainer, the audience is familiar with it.
Right.
But there's really something about looking out into an audience and seeing so many faces that have never seen anything like what you're doing. And traveling as much as I do, it becomes hard to remember that, because you do the same acts over and over again.
Right, exactly.
And to you as an entertainer, it can be like, oh man, I feel like I'm not being creative enough, I'm not doing enough. And then you forget that the majority of the people in the world haven't seen anything like what you do. So it's always new to them. I think that's a real joy for me.
Well, that's good. You get that out of it. And I know you talked about prep, because I'll go back to these, but I know they're on here, but I don't know what in order, so we'll skip around. But that each audience is different, and you have different types of audience. The kind of audience that's at a biker convention is not going to be the audience you have at a tattoo show.
True.
And do you, like you say, maybe, I guess on the fly, adapt your show to your audience?
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Like you're going to do this and say, well, wait a minute, I'm going to do this instead. Because you have total freedom to just kind of switch up in the middle, I guess.
Yeah, or you show up and half the audience is kids under 10 and you're like, oh, we're going to change a lot of this show today.
There you go. We're not going to do the barbed wire saddle act.
Yeah, that's one of the, I'm very lucky to be performing as long as I have, and I'm confident enough in what I do so that I can just show up and change things on the fly. It's much harder if you're starting out in Sideshow, because then you're like, oh no, I have this routine, it's so worked out, my pattern is so good, and then you don't really know what to do, but luckily I've been thrown into enough dumpster fires that, you can throw me in anywhere and I've got it.
Well, that makes, they would say, you're a real trooper, you're a real pro, in doing that sort of thing. Now, is there any tricks, not tricks, but any acts that you'd still want to master or that you haven't tried?
I would like to be a better sword swallower. Okay. I am a terrible sword swallower. It just takes too much practice, and
it's hard.
It's a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And I should be practicing every day until I get really great at it, but
you don't.
I don't.
Because there are people, who see that, or they've seen it maybe on TV or person. So, oh, that's nothing, because you see them doing it. But it's very, very difficult, because the body wants to reject that sword
completely.
And that's why you have to keep up with it. I don't know if you knew of this, because I've had conversations with her too. A woman called Tessa Fontaine, who did the Electric Woman book and traveled with the World of Wonders, that she talked about, she could never really truly master that. You start things like putting a coat hanger down your throat or something. But there's somebody like Tommy Breen, who I saw in January, do 7 swords at the same time go down. And a scimitar, which that's the one that impressed me, the curved sword, and he even leans his body so, it'll go in that way. And so that takes practice. How have you evolved as a performer?
Well, now I talk my own acts.
Right.
For years, I was a mute act.
You were mute.
Yeah.
You started that way.
We had a outside talker, an inside talker, and Reggie did none of that.
Okay.
So I was a completely silent act for years. I've only been talking my own acts for about 8 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. Totally
What caused
silent.
the change?
I got really sick of having somebody that was talking for me and not really speaking what I needed them to say.
Okay.
Particularly if we had hecklers or if we had something like that, they would shut it down the way that a dude would shut it down.
Okay.
They weren't shutting it down the way that I needed to end it. Sometimes I didn't feel like the way that my acts were being presented or the jokes that were being made. I think just like growing up as a woman too. Also, having a man insult you on stage or make jokes about your body size or your bust or this and that, it doesn't work. But when you make a lot of jokes about yourself and it's self-deprecating, it's fine.
Right.
And so there's certain things like I was able to keep some of the jokes that we used in the show, but I just grew too much as a person to be able to have somebody else talk for me.
And talking your own act was the biggest evolution for you?
Completely, yeah.
Anything else, would you say?
I became less fearful.
Okay.
I became less fearful of judgment within the community or, not having a regular job anymore. The answer is always yes until it's no.
Right.
It's become my life motto. So it's always yes till it's no.
There you go. So are you fearless now?
I like to think that I'm fearless. I definitely get scared a lot, but I like to think that I'm better at working through those things. You know, I spent a lot of my, unfortunately, teens and 20s being afraid to do a lot of things. And I just don't want to do that anymore.
Well,
I want
good for
to enjoy
you.
as much as I can.
Do you keep yourself in top shape to be a performer? Do you work out? Do you watch your diet? Things like that? Or do you even have time to that? Or is because you're so busy, that is your workout?
I wish I had a better reason for not working out as much as I do. Yeah, I mean, I go through bouts. I probably quit smoking about 4 months every year.
Okay.
But my work with Circus Una, we do complete setups and breakdowns by ourselves, so swinging a sledgehammer and putting that whole rig up ourselves. Yeah.
Very physical.
So during the summer, I'm in great shape. Come see me by September 1. I am going to be so fit.
Okay.
But then in the off season, it just it takes a dive, and I turn into Jell-O. But I try to do as much as I can to stay healthy. I don't really drink that much anymore. Try to get as much sleep as I can. I'm constantly in airports, constantly traveling. So that's what really exhausts me, is all of that.
Right. Well, of course, you know, folks, we're catching her between airplanes right now, too. But now, of course, you have been involved with the Southern Sideshow Hootenanny.
Yeah.
And you were secretary, you said, for 4 years. And you're taking a step back now.
Yes.
Now, explain for people, I think, what that organization is and what it does.
Well, the Southern Sideshow Hootenanny is a nonprofit organization that's based on community and skills building. So it is a full 3-day festival, for if you count the opening dinner Thursday night.
Okay.
But every single night of the weekend there is a show. And then during the day, Saturday, there is workshops and lectures. There's also an awards brunch. It's loosely based on a sideshow gathering that happened for years in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So we wanted to continue that, but also add some flair, make it a little bit bigger and more accessible and more fun to come to. But there's 3 different ranges. So Friday night is typically for innovators, which could be new people that are breaking in and doing something different, or it could be really advanced performers that have taken something and changed it. Saturday night would be an all-stars and legends show, and that's where you see all of the more seasoned performers, the headliners, and then Sunday would be troops, so different groups that we have. So we like to, we want it to be a celebration of the people that are awesome in Sideshow, but also a welcoming weekend for newbies, that they can pick up a lot of skills. A lot of what we get in terms of gigs and seeing each other and getting to know each other is networking.
Right.
You know, it's not like there's no real LinkedIn for Sideshow performers. It's really who you know, and then they refer you. They can't take a gig, so I met this great person at the Hootenanny, and they can do exactly what you're looking for. And it's just pointing people in the right direction, and that really, I think, has helped connect people all over.
Well, it's great to have a little community of the Sideshow people.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
I think, you know, in a sense, it's another reason why I think there ought to be more prominence to Sideshow and variety acts now, because the death of the Barnum and Bailey circus. There are not a lot of big circuses around. Cirque du Soleil, to me, is not really a circus. It's closer to Sideshow, really. But some of these people have unique talents. They're, you know, contortionists and hoop people and all this stuff. And that it's something you all could replace in the entertainment gap for a lot of people, a lot of citizens.
I like to think so.
You know, and that's the way I sort of see that. And another thing you've done, of course, is some modeling, and you're available for modeling and photography. And what I saw interesting, a woman who's brilliant, who's painted you several times.
Oh, Bridget O'Dowd.
Great paintings of you.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she sells them or that she's giving them to you or what, but they're really great.
They're for sale.
Because she
sells paintings.
They do look like you. I mean, it's very representational.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate that the art community in Philadelphia was incredibly supportive, and I also had an art gallery.
Right.
Eventually, but yeah, I've been painted by a bunch of different artists, and I've been able to model for some really cool people. And like I said, the answer is always yes until it's no. So I've been lucky to have all of these opportunities. People know, like, oh, I want to try this. I want to collaborate, and I'm here. I'm here for it. I want to help you. I want you to help me. I want us to get better. I want us to all make money in the arts, because it's impossible and we need each other.
Terrific. Now, and also, I saw that you did a couple of movies.
Oh, yeah, not that many. Just a couple of pieces.
2, and one is supposed to be Muy El Gaucho Navidad.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
That's, basically means a very El Gaucho Christmas. But, and what was that all about?
Oh, that was, I believe I was a villain.
You were a villain?
I was a villain. I know,
In this
believe it or
movie?
not. I always get the villain because I have tattoos. They always give me the villain role.
Or usually, even if you go back to old movies, it's the brunettes who were the villains. The blondes were the girlfriends of the star.
True. And the redhead was the sex pot.
That's right. So you did that as a villain in a movie.
Yeah, I was a villain in I think that was a pretty amazingly horrible B horror movie type superhero thing.
That's what this was?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's so good.
It's a horror flick. I think it's actually online, but
I'm sure it's terrible.
Excerpts from it. It was about 30 minutes of it somewhere. And then there was another one, an interesting title called Ski Titson. They said you were in that.
Oh my goodness.
Do you remember that one?
I don't even remember that one. I remember the name.
It's a strange name.
Yeah, the art community in Philadelphia is very weird.
Okay.
I'm in a lot of strange movies. I did like a serial killer pin-up calendar.
Oh, wow.
I think it was James Bundy. Yeah.
You were one of the serial killers?
Yeah, they had pin-up models that represented each serial killer.
You did Bundy.
Yeah, I did Bundy. It's a weird community.
Well, anyway. Now, of course, you won't be able to do this forever. I know. That's one thing. So, what do you see as beyond your sideshow career?
Well, I'm going to perform for as long as people will pay me.
Okay.
But I think I see the lifespan of a female entertainer is definitely shorter than male entertainers, although they don't like to admit it.
And that's sexism too, I think.
Well, yeah, but I mean, it's also it's entertainment. You know, it's not necessarily the industry; it's the people buying the tickets.
Right.
You know,
they want to see the pretty young girl.
Exactly, and they do want to see good entertainment, but a lot of people are scared to put forth older performers. You see, like the burlesque legends all the time. They want to get hired. They want to do things. They have great acts. They're legends, but they don't get gigs often. I see myself pretty much transitioning into hosting a lot of shows.
Oh, okay.
I would like to have some residency at casinos around where I am, which is Casino Land, the deserts of Southern California. And I'd love to put together entertainment booking and just to be able to stay active and know what's still out there in Sideshow and the variety world, be able to keep my fingers in all of it. But even if I'm not performing, I'm grouping people together, I'm hiring people, I'm putting together gigs. Managing entertainment is what I like to do.
So managing people as opposed to maybe producing shows.
Yeah.
Okay. And, well, when you're not traveling and you're not performing, what's Reggie do in her private life?
Oh, I sit in my hot tub or I lay on my couch petting my cats. I'm home about 2 to 3 days a week. And all I have time for is doing my laundry, unpacking, repacking, vacuuming, cleaning up the house, and then taking a day or two off to do nothing.
Wow. So no real hobbies or anything or activities you like?
Not really. It's those 2 or 3 days are all spent catching up on emails or messenger messages and
booking more bookings for the future.
Yeah, trying to get myself booked.
And you have a very understanding boyfriend if he doesn't see you half the time.
Yeah, he travels for work. He's also an independent contractor.
So
he's a camera operator.
He has a job too. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good. Then what we want you to do before we end, and we're so happy again to have caught you, because you're such a globetrotter.
In and out.
That's right. She's quite the globetrotter, folks, but definitely worth it. And so I want you to look into the monitor over there. Tell people what your contact information is.
Ooh. You could reach me at reggiebugmuncher.com. I'm also on Facebook at facebook.com/reggieawesome. And you could email me directly at reggie@reggiebugmuncher.com.
Very good. And of course, I wish one day maybe I can catch one of your acts live,
Yes.
Not just something that's on YouTube.
Yeah, I keep my dates up to date on the website. I'm in Baltimore at least once a year.
For the convention. And you do to this convention, you were doing a show at 3:30 every day or something?
We do a Friday night, Saturday and Sunday afternoon, and a Saturday night.
Oh, I gotcha. Because you did at least 5 shows. Wow.
Yeah.
Kept you busy.
Yeah, and then I got a 4-hour tattoo in between shows on Saturday, and then did a burlesque fundraiser up in Philadelphia last night. So.
You have room for another tattoo?
I know. There's always room.
All right, for more. Then you could be one of those, like the illustrated woman or something,
so
completely tattooed.
As I get older, I'm just trying to cover up the varicose veins and then the liver spots. It'll hide it all.
Have all those tattoos.
I know.
That would be terrific. But again, I would encourage people to look for Reggie and where she's performing all over this country and maybe all over the world. And definitely going to be worth seeing this woman who, as they say, she's also Reggie Awesome. That so many titles, and I think she deserves every one. So once again, thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
And folks, there she is, and we'll be ending another episode here. And next time, like I say, you never know who's going to walk through the door of our studio, but I guarantee it'll be somebody interesting. So don't forget to like and to share what we're doing here. And until then, I'm saying goodbye.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore. You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Good evening. My name is Spencer Horseman. I'm the owner-operator of Illusions Magic Bar and Theater located here in Baltimore, Maryland. We've been open now for 11 years. Originally, when my father and I started this, it was his magic store for 20 years called the Yogi Magic Mart. After I graduated high school, we decided to team up as business partners and create a magic-themed bar and theater that we now feature my hour-and-a-half, 2-hour comedy magic shows every Friday and Saturday year-round, and have been at it now for just over 11 years.
Hi, I'm Caroline Gale, and I am an entertainer and performer here at Illusions Magic Bar with my fiance, Spencer Horseman.
Okay, now I know when you were younger, Spencer, you worked also sort of a magician, but magician/ventriloquist.
There's something about you that looks familiar. We've been together for years. Of course I look familiar. No, it's something else. You remind me of someone in the movies. Well, if the lighting is right, people say I look like Brad Pitt. All right, Dexter, I get your point.
Yes.
How did that ventriloquism get into your act, and why is Dexter been retired?
Fair. Well, again, I started learning magic at 4. I started performing alongside my father in his shows when I was 6. Started my own shows when I was 8, but around my 8th birthday, I started picking up ventriloquism due to a friend of mine giving me a stuffed puppet for my birthday, and again, spending all of my after school days here in the magic shop, always wandering around learning things. I came across a VHS video. The kids remember those. Older than I look, but right?
I just wonders.
Yes, exactly. So I came across a VHS video of Paul Winchell, and it was a tape that he put out called "Learn Ventriloquism for Fun and Profit." And I started watching that, and by the end of the day, I had some of the basics down. And it was one of those things too that, it was just another means of entertaining people with. It was a skill that I enjoyed, had fun with it, had a bit of a natural knack for it. My mother, she said, well, you still do magic, so why don't you try to do magic with a ventriloquism? And something that had been tinkered with before, but traditionally was always the magician doing a trick with one hand while the puppet watches. The way that we flipped it on its head was I was able to have the puppet do all the magic, where it was him pulling off the effect.
How does this work? Just turn the crank and listen to the unique sound. Okay? It seems to be stuck. But that's impossible. Let's investigate. Let's take a look inside. Let's see, what do we have here? Hey, what's this?
So is extremely different. So from there, we just ran with that for a number of years. That was something, again, that a lot of people hadn't seen, didn't really do much of. In high school, I slowed down performing in general just because I was busy with school. It was still high school, even though I wasn't going to college. Still wanted to graduate. And my parents then started going through divorce, unfortunately, when I was 15. So I had a lot going on. So I stopped performing in general, magic and ventriloquism, pretty much when I was about 16, 17. Fully just gave it up and only just kept practicing the magic because that's easy to practice. But you can do that sitting at your desk, but you can't practice a ventriloquism puppet sitting in your classroom unless you want to be a smartass, which I am, but I had to refrain from doing so. So that being said, once I picked up the magic again, I really hadn't found a way that I was happy with of reintroducing the ventriloquism because I had done it from when I was 8 till again about 16, and I was cute kid and all that stuff. But
got you on Letterman.
And yeah, so it was a lot of Letterman and Jerry Springer before the fights, before it was the craziness that it is now, even if this still is on now occasionally. But I didn't really have a way of bringing it more to an adult crowd because now all my magic, my corporate events were for adults. But when you get into ventriloquism in that crowd, you're expected to be, just edgier, to cuss, and to be all of that changes with ventriloquism because it's such a weird, it's considered so corny that you have to go that route. And that wasn't me. That wasn't my style. I really, even still now in my performing now, I'll maybe say something suggestive here and there, maybe a brief cuss word, but it's all done very, very playfully. It's done in such a way that you don't really hear it. It's just used at the one moment, at a precise moment, as opposed to some people now use it like every other word, or they just try to do that shock, with comedy. Because again, my style of performing with magic isn't your strict performing magic, very stoic and serious and tall, dark, and handsome. I'm short and nerdy and scrawny, and I have the complexion of a tube sock. So, I understand my place on the food chain, and I emphasize my natural character. When you see me perform on stage, that's who I am. So my show is extremely interactive. I'm very comical, self-deprecating. I have a lot of just goofy pop culture references. And again, with the ventriloquism, I wasn't able to formulate that in a way that I was with the magic. So the ventriloquism kind of fell by the wayside, and I just kept pursuing the magic from there. So the reason I really pursued the comedy magic route is that's what really came naturally. A lot of magicians have the issue where, one, they just emulate and duplicate and replicate the magicians they watch. One, and I understand it's an admiration thing because, I look up to this person. Actors and comedians recite plays and recite lines just to get those words out of their mouth, but then ultimately have to create their own art. It's the same thing with magicians, but for some reason, magicians get stuck on that and they don't do their own character. And again, a character can be something that you create on stage that's completely different from you, which actually requires great acting skills, and that's few and far in between for a lot of magicians. And ultimately, everybody is a unique individual. You have your own interests, you have your own view on the world, so embellish that and just be, really, it's easier said than done, but be yourself and just embellish it, make it a bigger thing on stage. And so that's, as a magician, I look at it from that angle. My parents were really big on that with me, where they go, okay, it's great that you want to do magic. Remember, that's just a tool, though, in your arsenal to ultimately perform, especially being a magician that performs on stage. When you do close-up magic, that's in very short spurts. But when you're performing on stage in front of people, you're creating a mini piece of theater. So you're utilizing scripting, you're utilizing choreography, music, and lighting, video if you so choose. It's more elements than just that magic trick, and magicians get lost in that. And they go, well, I can't develop a character because of this trick. Well, then think of it outside of the trick. The trick is just one element of that. So my parents would go, okay, you have a trick that you like, great, but now for inspiration for it, watch anything else but magic. So they were really, I grew up watching old silent comedies and the old comedians. That was my father's influence, my parents' influence. Is what I grew up on. So, I loved all, Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Three Stooges. It's a heavy influence on me. And then my natural interest is being just a nerdy person in my private life. I love movies, I love comic books, I love science, I love reading, I love traveling. So I incorporate that into my show, which is extremely evident when you see my show. There's little references for everybody in the show, which also is great because it makes it more accessible. A lot of magicians are extremely I don't know. I don't want to say narrow-minded, but they use their character in a very specific way, which can only be used for a specific type of audience, which is great. Like if you have that niche, but if your niche is super small, you're not going to be able to reach that many people. So if your character is a bit more accessible to the general public, if you come to my show here at Illusions, at any given time, I have guests sitting in my audience from 21 to 81, every race, religion, ethnic creed, background, sexuality, you name it, they're here in this show, which magic already is a very universal art form. You can go anywhere in the country, not even speak the language, and most people appreciate magic. But adding the comedy element to it is something that's always difficult because comedy is extremely subjective, especially in today's culture, in this very PC culture that we live in now where people are kind of offended by anything just for the sake of being offended. And that's always that line, too, that I'm always juggling and recycling because you never know what's going to come out in pop culture now that's either offensive or something that's happened with somebody famous or that I have a reference in my show or this or that. So I try to keep my show very neutral. Again, the comedy is just very generalized. It's more vaudeville, again, very playful, maybe suggestive here and there, self-deprecating. I'll make the occasional pop culture, political joke, but only if it's something that I know everybody's on board with. I don't really try to make... I make a statement about who I am as a person, how I view the world, but I'm not doing it in a way to push my view down other people's throats. I just kind of go, welcome to my world. Here's the craziness that goes on in my head. Hope you have fun. And, I hope you've, at the end of the night, really had a good time. And if you came in here with a heavy heart or also worrying about other things, hope you're able to be distracted for a couple hours with it. Otherwise, if you came in just to have a good time for the sake of having a good time, great.
So you've been doing that. You could do that, period. But when and why did you say, well, now I'm also going to be an escape artist?
Yeah. The escape artistry came as an interest in my early teens because it was another facet of magic that I had stumbled across that not many people did. And it was extremely different. I didn't use any livestock, and I used a bird in my ventriloquism act, but I never used rabbits because I'm allergic, and so that really wasn't the most practical thing for me. And I didn't like doing the big illusions, one, because it really wasn't practical with the way that I was performing along with my father's shows and whatnot, but I also didn't like the disconnect of being that far on the stage that I couldn't actually interact with the audience. It felt more like performing at the audience and just showing them something and pointing at it and being like, oh, well, a poor assistant suffocates inside. So that really didn't appeal to me. And the other forms of magic, there's all the great swab manipulation stuff and all that. No, that's great, but it needs a very specific setting, and so again, I like the spontaneity. My show has a structure, but I like the spontaneity, the comedy aspect. And so that led towards that. I don't do much mentalism because I don't take myself that seriously. I can't keep a straight face for that long. And I think a lot of people that do that sometimes they believe their own powers, and it's just a thing. So I got into the escape artistry because it was something that, one, heavily relied on a lot of skill. Again, the pure sleight of hand, which was something I was already obsessed with cards and coins. Because being an only child that I'm aware of, I like that time to sit and practice. My parents, they specialize in the kid show magic, and I had moved away from that for a while. And so the escapes were an interesting thing. So it was something that I took up as a side hobby. I never actually performed any escapes publicly until I was 21. Right. So I learned lockpicking, I learned the rope ties, straight jacket escapes, all that. I worked on that for years before actually doing it in front of a live audience. And the main reason was I already look young for my age, and I looked even younger at 20. I didn't look 21 at all when I was 21. And there's certain types of magic, and just like acting and jokes, that unless you're a certain age or you come from a certain upbringing, you should not be doing that material. So you have a lot of kids who, getting into close-up magic a number of years ago when Texas Hold'em was becoming very popular, they were doing gambling demonstrations, right? They were showing, oh, I can cheat at cards. But you have this kid who's doing it who may have the sleight of hand to do it, but the presentation doesn't seem believable because you're like, well, you're not old enough to gamble, so why do you know these things? So it's a weird thing to present. So being a kid, I found that presenting escapes underage wasn't entertaining for audiences. It was uncomfortable because people are looking at me like, this looks like my child or my grandchild getting tied up. And back then I wasn't even doing anything dangerous. I mean, maybe I'd hang upside down into a straitjacket and do that. But even still, like asking an adult to put, and this is before PC culture that we're in nowadays, this is 20 years ago. Even still asking a stranger, an adult, to tie up a child in chains and ropes is uncomfortable and wrong. And I was like, okay, and I recognize that. And I was like, all right, I'm not going to do that, but this is just something I'm going to have under my belt. So then, once I opened up the bar, right when I turned 21, we opened March 10th of 2007. March 11th, midnight, I turned 21. So I kind of bordered the line there. That's when I started presenting the escapes. And even still when I do escapes, there's two different things that I've always tried to add to it. One is getting away from the escapes that are traditionally hidden and covered. I know back in Houdini's time, you could build a 15, 20-minute escape and be out of view and just have a live band playing to kill that time and to build that suspense. But audiences now just went instant because of technology, because of TV and all that stuff. So having anything that's covered up is it's not as entertaining unless it's done very quickly. As an escape, it's more interesting to watch the skill, especially if there's a danger element involved. They want to watch the entire process. So I've always made a habit of creating escapes that are in full view, that are uncovered. So my water tank, unlike Houdini's, the water torture cell, this is full. Even the box is clear. You see everything that's going on. There's no cover. All my straitjacket escapes have always been uncovered. My cement tank that I did, everything you can see the entire time. Unless it's a challenge piece or more of a puzzle piece to hide the secret, then it's covered, but it's done in such a quick moment that's irrelevant. The cover is irrelevant. It's more the mystery and the magical moment behind it, as opposed to an escape where you're typically watching the skill. You watch a piano player hit keys on a piano, you see him doing it, you see the sequence, but you couldn't replicate it. It's the same thing with escapes. The other element that I've added to it is adding, again, more of my personality to the escapes. Because all escapes, whether they have a danger element or not to it, 99% of the time are presented serious. There is this it's a danger element, or it's a psychological, I've got to work my body and this and that. And that doesn't fit my style. So I had to really work on honing presentational aspects to escapes, even ones that had a danger element into it, that didn't cheapen it, but still created a bit more of a roller coaster of emotions than just keeping it high tension the whole time. Because when you watch my water tank here, I'm getting locked in this tiny little tank. I have some serious music. You can feel and see the reaction from people in the audience and the tension building up. Be it either because people have a fear of water, because they're claustrophobic, or because they're now emotionally attached to me after an hour and a half show. They just are like, why are you doing this to yourself? We like you already. You don't have to do this. I try to break that tension. It's as opposed to just having this increase like a horror film where it's just constant tension. Sure. I try to break that so that way the audience can breathe. And that was actually something that I fought with the directors and the producers in America's Got Talent with, was that they went, you're always smiling and happy, even when you're literally about to get thrown into this dangerous situation. Why? It's not, I don't understand that. I go, well, my serious is different than other people's. That's how I process. That's how I keep calm. I'm not the type to, yes, I'm not joking around and treating this like it's just a quick trick when I get locked underwater. Every time we do this, and Caroline here is helping me and being my safety assistant, I treat every time like it is the first time. But for me, the way that I'm able to keep calm, to keep my head clear, because most of this really is a psychological game when it comes to holding your breath for that long or focusing on picking locks. That's how I do it. For me, I keep a bit more playful, I have a good time with it, and I want the audience to know that too. Because again, if you keep that tension too high, they then can't enjoy it. I'll have people point blank get up and leave during that point, or 100% close their eyes and have, their date tell them, hey, okay, now it's over, now you can open your eyes. And because I want them to enjoy the show, I still want them to have fun with it. And that's something that, I've had fun being able to do, is figure out, okay, how can you present something serious and dangerous, but still in such a way that, it's still playful and not as just anxiety-inducing as what everybody else does.
Now, the show, since Caroline has... When did you join the show?
I've been working the front door for 7 months now. I've been in the show since May. So about that long. About that long.
And having not seen you in the show, what is your role in the show? Are you an assistant, or are you considered his partner at this point?
We're moving towards partner. We're incorporating more of me into the show. I have my own piece that I'm doing right now. I'm incorporated into one of our intro pieces, and I'm also doing the water tank stuff. I'm locking him in the fish tank.
Okay. It's interesting. Once you're married to her, just think she's going to have that power.
Right, yes, exactly. Right.
So be nice to her.
Exactly. But it's a different emotion too, with her, locking me in and people seeing that. And again, that's a whole people see that, absolutely.
We have a very morbid friend that's waiting for him to die in the tank so I can own a theater.
Because I know at one point you were going to go solo. You were going to have your own magic act.
I was working on my own magic act for a while, and it was the problem that I kept running into. Because I'm an actor primarily, and that's kind of where I come from, it was hard for me to write my own voice. It was hard for me to write my own magic pieces. So I was talking to a lot of magicians, and they were all kind of coaching me. And a problem I found, every time I introduced my act to a magician, they rewrote it for themselves. And I would keep hearing different variations on the same kind of line. And it was hard for me just to kind of separate what would have worked for me and what wouldn't have worked. And that was why it didn't quite pan out the way I wanted it to. But I've done some things on my own. I produced my own seance room in Los Angeles. I did a 3-minute piece. It was a part of a larger piece there. I've got my seance room here that we're working on, and I've written some pieces for the show that we're going to start getting incorporated in shortly.
Yeah, and you in New York was a tarot card reader.
I was a tarot card reader in Los Angeles, actually.
Oh, you were?
Yes, that's where they like tarot card readers the best. Everyone in Los Angeles loves a tarot card reader. If you're in a town that's as volatile as LA, or in a business as volatile as show business, everyone wants a tarot card reader around. Whether they believe in it or not, they want a tarot card reader around.
And don't you read cards here after the show?
I do occasionally read cards here after the show. It's been a minute since I've done it because we've been pushing the seance room more.
Right.
But I have been doing tarot card readings after the shows.
Okay. And part of it, I don't think there are that many partner acts, really. They're co-equal in the business when it's a male and a female.
No, there aren't.
There's the point where, some of the tricks where she takes the lead, or whatever, that kind of thing. Or even just a little tiny solo piece, or or things where.
And that's been more of our interest, is because she, again, has her skill set, especially with, the mentalism stuff, and her her actual genuine acting ability, unlike a lot of magicians that are not actors. So she, and it's able to, it's a different play that her and I get to have, and chemistry on stage versus the spontaneous chemistry that and spontaneity that I would have with an assistant coming from the audience. So because of her, we've been able to dive a bit more into some of the other weirder stuff, because we both have it's the best way of doing it is very much a Gomez and Morticia Adams relationship, where we're very lovable, but we also have this weird, just kind of dark edge to us. It's just strange. We like weird stuff, and we've been able to now showcase that with some pieces with her in the show. And so we're trying to do that, because again, like you said, a lot of magic acts that use an assistant, it's just an assistant, and they either don't speak, or the assistant just emulates a female version of the male magician, and they both speak, but they don't have their own unique character, and that's it. And a lot of people have heavily played up all. You obviously have either the purposely ditzy assistant, for the comedy magicians, or the assistant that just doesn't care. But Caroline's is a whole different new thing.
Terrific. I mean, what comes to mind to me is watching over the years. There was a pair were the Pendragons.
Oh yes.
But Charlotte, when she was with him, was more like a glorified assistant.
Right. Yeah.
And after they divorced, she does her own show now.
Right.
So she's the lead magician now with male assistants.
Right, exactly. Yep.
So this is going to be a real team, and I can't wait to see that. I'll have to come back, Spencer, to shows here.
It'll be dark and magical and weird. It's going to be wonderful. I'm stoked. So you can follow us on Instagram at Illusions Magic Bar. That's it, correct? And on Twitter, we're The Magic Bar, or on Facebook, you can look up The Illusions Magic Bar as well.
And our main website. Oops, sorry.
Of course.
Oh, sorry. And just simply our main website. We can buy our tickets for the show at illusionsmagicbar.com.
There you go. And folks, it's been a great evening speaking with Caroline and Spencer. And like they say, this is an atmosphere where you feel at home. So come on by, see the show any Friday or Saturday evening, and they're always here. And like Motel 6, they'll leave the light on for you. So I say this is myself here tonight saying good night.
You're watching The Paul Stefan Show on TV Free Baltimore.
Hello, I'm Steve Darnall, the publisher of Nostalgia Digest, and you're watching TV Free Baltimore. Well done.
The Despacito is on my shore, Maryland, my Maryland. His torch is at thy temple door, Maryland, my Maryland. Avenge the patriotic roar that fleck the streets of Baltimore, and be the battle queen of yore, Maryland, my Maryland. Thou wilt not cower in the dust, Maryland, my Maryland. Thy beaming sword shall never rust, Maryland, my Maryland. Remember Carol's sacred trust, remember Howard's warlike thrust, and always onward will the just, Maryland, my Maryland.
This concludes another day of live stream broadcasting from TV Free Baltimore.